Hi, I'm David Reed, and I'll be discussing self-disclosure in relationships. According to our textbook, Looking Out, Looking In, quote, one way by which we judge the strength of our relationships is the amount of information we share with others, end quote. People in close relationships will often exclaim proudly that they don't keep secrets from one another, that they are completely transparent. Webster's dictionary defines self-disclosure as, quote, a process of communication by which one person reveals information about himself or herself to another. The information can be descriptive or evaluative and include thoughts, feelings, aspirations, goals, failures, successes, fears, and dreams, as well as one's likes, dislikes, and favorites. End quote. Learning how and when to disclose personal information to another person is essential to creating successful close relationships with other people. Factors such as culture or gender play a big role in self-disclosure. For example, Lexi Lopez Mayo said of her Latin culture, quote, one of the things I've noticed about my Latin friends and family is that we tend to be more expressive and disclosing than many of my Euro-American friends. Of course, there are exceptions to that rule, but overall, I think people from my cultural background tend to reveal a lot. If we think it, we say it. If we feel it, we express it. End quote. Gender within cultures will also play a role. Lopez Mayo said of men in her culture, quote, Latin men easily express positive emotions, but they often hide negative feelings such as hurt and sadness. There's a strong cultural norm for Latinos to be tough, not admit failure, or show weakness. End quote. Cultural and gender norms play a big role in how much and in what way people tend to disclose feelings and information. Of course, there are individual personalities and many exceptions to these cultural norms, but by and large, cultural norms play a large factor in self-disclosure. There are four different characteristics to look for in self-disclosure. One is it usually occurs in dyads. That means that one-on-one conversations are usually more comfortable than more public revelations. It is much easier for most people to open up to one person than it is to open up to a large group. Self-disclosure is typically incremental, meaning that small disclosures will build into bigger ones as the people involved become more comfortable with each other. Self-disclosure is also relatively scarce, meaning it is most common early in the relationship than at crucial times later on. It is not a frequent occurrence in more developed relationships where the people involved already know a lot about each other. And of course, self-disclosure is best done in the context of a positive relationship, meaning it is most productive when delivered in a constructive manner, even if the information is difficult. Positive relationships should have the strength to handle such information. Along with the different characteristics of self-disclosure come the different degrees of self-disclosure. Not all disclosure is equal, nor should it be. The levels of disclosure can be explained by breadth and depth. Breadth is the amount of topics you cover, ranging from career ambitions to your academic life to your love life. Depth is how much detail you choose to include in the topics discussed. Betsy Toldset, in her article titled Self-Disclosure, Intimacy, and the Depenetration Process, featured in the Journal of Personality of Social Psychology, said, quote, both are crucial in developing a fully intimate relationship. The range of topics discussed by two individuals is the breadth of disclosure. The degree to which the information revealed is private or personal is the depth of that disclosure. End quote. For example, an example of over disclosure would be in this comic right here. It says it has two people on a date, and one person says, Bob, as a token of my appreciation for this wonderful lunch, I would like to disclose to you my income tax returns for the past 4 years. It's a humorous example of over disclosing in a not as intimate or under intimate setting. Social penetration theory, according to Richard West, author of Introducing Communication Theory, Analysis, and Application, 5th edition, defines the depth of all self-disclosure in 5 stages: orientation, exploratory affective, stable stage, and the optional stage of deep penetration. Orientation is where people engage in small talk along with cliches like "how's it going?" or "life's like that." In the exploratory affective stage, people tend to reveal themselves a bit, expressing moderate opinions and views on the world. This stage is often known as a casual friendship. In the affective stage, individuals are getting more comfortable to talk about private and personal matter, and there are some forms of commitment in this stage. Personal idioms, or words and phrases that embody unique meanings between individuals, are used in conversations. Criticism and arguments may arise. A comfortable share of positive and negative reactions occurs in this stage. Relationships become more important to both parties, more meaningful, and more enduring. It is a stage of close friendships and intimate partners. In the stable stage, the relationship reaches a plateau of complete honesty with one another. The 5th stage does not always happen. It is called depenetration. This is where the costs of a relationship outweigh the benefits, so one or both individuals disengage and stop sharing details about their lives. A study done at Oregon State University states that, quote, relational satisfaction and disclosure have a curvilinear relationship. Satisfaction is highest with moderate levels of disclosure, end quote. This means you should always be careful not to disclose too much or too little. To help with knowing how much to disclose, there are some guidelines for self-disclosure. You should consider if you have a moral obligation to disclose information. For example, if you're going to have a sexual relationship, you should disclose any sexually transmitted infections you may have. Another humorous example of that would be on this comic. On page 322 in our textbook, it has 2 dogs, and one is saying, "Since we're both being honest, I should fill you in that I have fleas," which would be their version of a sexually transmitted infection. There should also be a consideration of how important this person is to you. The amount of information you disclose to a coworker should be significantly different than somebody you are seriously dating. You should consider if the amount and type of disclosure is appropriate. If you have just met somebody, it is probably not a good idea to share your whole life story, but that might be appropriate if you are developing a close relationship with somebody. The risks should be thought of before the discussion. You should think about what information is relevant and also constructive. And of course, the level of self-disclosure should be reciprocated. If it is not, that gives an imbalance of power in the relationship. There is always alternatives to self-disclosure if you feel that disclosure at that point would not be beneficial. One alternative would be silence. Keeping quiet is a good way to protect yourself from oversharing. This is good to do when telling the truth about something could jeopardize your relationship with that person. Another option, although sometimes seeming unethical, is lying. Most healthy relationships have some form of benevolent or well-meaning lies. There are 5 good reasons for lying. 1 is to save face, or to save yourself or somebody else from embarrassment. Another is to avoid tension or conflict. It is sometimes worth it to mislead a little bit to avoid a big fight. The third is to guide social interaction, or to help everyday social interactions run smoothly. The fourth is to expand or reduce relationships, and lastly, you can lie to gain power in a situation. There are also other ways to avoid self-disclosure, such as sending obvious hints, equivocating, and so on. All of these things will help you to develop closer relationships and help you to realize which self-disclosures are appropriate and which are not. Thank you.